With a week left in the World Cup, Alex and I decided to take a moment to pause from pondering Pixar and talk about this worldwide phenomenon. Now, Alex, you are a super fan. Right?
Yeah, I guess in the size and scope of things compared to the average American, I would call myself a much larger fan of the world's most popular game. Sure, you could say that.
It's something that you have passion about, and what we love to do on this channel is celebrate what we nerd out about, and this is definitely something that you nerd out about.
Yeah.
I don't. So this week I'm gonna just be kind of the interviewer to learn more about the World Cup, because I generally don't really know much about it. My sister likes soccer, but I played soccer for one season in like third grade.
Well, your sister is a smart person. You know that.
Definitely is. Although I think she really only watches women's soccer, but I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, how you doing today before we get into the topic?
I'm doing well. The tournament has certainly provided a lot of surprises to this point, and certainly excited with these few games left to see who will be our eventual champion, all things considered. But it's the one thing I have to say about this tournament that certainly has to be noted is that for a lot of Americans, it's a very bittersweet tournament because it's for the first time since, well, some of us that may be listening, or some of us were in diapers the last time the United States did not make it into a World Cup.
Wow.
Before this year. The run of the United States playing in the World Cup, I think, dates back to about 1990, like consecutively from about, I think from 90, like I want to say like 90 to 94 onward, the United States continued to make qualifications and make headroads into being successful in the World Cup final, in the World Cup tournament. But unfortunately, that dream was shattered in October of last year, 2017, when we lost to Trinidad and Tobago and did not get through the officially what is known as the CONCACAF hexagonal qualification tournament, which is, like you guessed, a hexagon. You all know a hexagon, right? It's a thing that's got, just 6 sides, and it's a 6-sided polygon. Anyway, it's not a math class. It's a tournament of 6 teams. We were one of them, and the best 3 teams were able to qualify to get one step closer to the World Cup. The top 2 teams, they go through, no problem. The third team goes into a playoff with other teams from other regional, continental conferences, if you will. North America and Central America get blended in together with the Caribbean, and that is known as CONCACAF. So yeah, each of its own conferences has their own qualification tournament. The U.S. unfortunately failed to make it into the 2018 World Cup that is currently being held in Russia.
Well, we didn't want to go see Putin anyway, right?
I mean, I feel like it's weird because there's a lot of controversies with this World Cup and the next one that will be happening 4 years from now in Qatar in terms of the selection process and how they were gifted these World Cups, because it's historically, up until the U.S. receiving it in 94, it's always gone to the destinations that have always had traditionally great World Cup teams.
Yeah, when I found out it's in Russia, I was like, I don't think soccer in Russia.
They don't really go along, and it's one of those things that their national league, it will not really produce great young players, in the sense that if they're great, they're going to go to greater club leagues in Europe, further west, or more centralized in Europe. But yeah, that's not a destination for soccer by any means. And if you think about it, 4 years from now, also in the summertime, we're going to be having a tournament in the Middle East in Qatar. Now, I'm not a climatologist by any stretch of the imagination, but if they're playing this tournament today in Qatar in June and July, over this last month, now is not the time to be playing soccer in a desert region. Last I checked. I mean, the high on average during June and July is 108 degrees.
Sheesh.
So
Wow.
even if you attempt to push this tournament back into, let's say, a September or October, where it may be a little bit more temperate, where the highs are only down to 102 to 95 on average, or only play the games at night where the highs are in the high to mid 80s, that might do it. But again, Qatar being given a World Cup is a major red flag in the eyes of a lot of folks. Mainly because they're not a soccer nation at all. They've never appeared in a World Cup ever. They've never qualified for a World Cup ever.
But I can see why they want to have the World Cup there, because my aunt and uncle, until the past month, have lived there for a couple years.
It's a beautiful place, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it's an up-and-coming, sprawling urban environment, lots of advanced technology. In fact, I think the last Star Trek movie filmed there to capture the just innovation of technology in the city.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. So I can see why they want to kind of rise to the world stage by including the World Cup, as a function in their city. But 100 degrees, like that's crazy, the temperature. But shall we move into the questions? Because I think you've outlined kind of a good context, but for me, the non-fan, I need more context around this institution. So, here we go, some questions. So, my first question to you. Number 1, the Olympics has global historical significance in the values that it represents. So does the World Cup also hold such values beyond just being a fun game? In other words, what is the historical significance of the World Cup and, what it represents?
Because in most nations across the globe, you look at a sport like soccer, football, whatever you'd like to call it in your region of the world, as a very approachable, very simple game to set up. You need a ball, and you need two peoples to really play soccer, whether they're passing it back and forth, trying to score or beat against another. It's a very simple game in its context and core to pick up and adapt. You find any round thing that you can kick about, whether it's a ball, a coconut, a cannonball. Well, probably the last two are not fun to kick, but you understand what I'm saying. You need something
it's
that
accessible.
kids can kind of gravitate to, and it's a fun way to stay active. So there's a lot of approachability for the game of soccer internationally to keep folks organized and active. Those values of having teammates and working as a team and functioning well, I think that's always gravitated those countries that are maybe not as well off to set up things like a soccer team or a soccer club or things like that.
So like any sport, it can satisfy our human desire for unity and collaboration.
And there is no other tournament like this now in the World Cup where right now 32 different teams come together in sportsmanship and in the pursuit of winning, and you have matchups like Nigeria versus Iceland. You'll have a Brazil versus a Germany. Historically, those have been very important contexts in games. Or games like England versus Australia, where historically England once owned Australia as a colony. Of course, it was a penal colony where they sent all their prisoners. So now the prisoners get to play against their makers. It's kind of weird.
Oh, I love that. That's fun. That's a fun dynamic there.
So the historical significance is that the greatest players playing for their country, representing their country in this game, trying to do their best and succeed. That's I think the largest historical significance of the World Cup. And again, the sportsmanship that brings that many nations together in one place to enjoy the game.
So, okay, so you're making me think. So it is connected to the Olympics. Like the Olympics equalizes all nations and says, okay, no matter what, this is what it comes down to.
Yes.
We're all equal. Let's see your athleticism and your skill and your preparation and grit come through. And that's how you're going to find your name on the world stage.
Exactly.
That's cool. Okay. So, like, my only sport that I really dive deep into is college football.
Oh, like American football.
Yes, the Southeastern Conference. My wife had to teach me all about football when I moved here because we didn't really watch it when I was growing up, except for the Super Bowl. And so
All right.
in college football, especially in the SEC, there's generally accepted trends of like the teams that are dominant and the teams that are underdogs. And it's really fun to follow that narrative throughout a season to see what happens. So is there a similar kind of accepted power teams and narrative in the World Cup?
Well, kind of going back to what I was hinting at a moment ago, that each continent has their own sort of continental system of organizing their qualifications for their tournaments, for nations to be sent to the World Cup. Currently, 32 different nations from around the world get to send teams. It used to be a much smaller tournament. But 211 nations were eligible to enter the qualification stage for the FIFA World Cup. Historically, over time, Brazil has been the most successful team. They have won 5 World Cups. Germany is close behind them at 4. But the expansion to 32 teams happened back in 1998, allowing more of Africa, Asia, and North America to take part.
So let me ask a follow-up question. So like,
Sure.
Conferences are essentially determined by the continent that you live on.
Yes, kind of like how the Southeastern Conferences consisted of those teams here in the southeast of the United States, where we live. Florida being one of those teams, Georgia, Mississippi, well, Ole Miss, as everyone else knows them, Mississippi State.
Yeah, but now we have like Texas teams coming in because they're marked by a skill set and a play style that defines that conference as well, not just geographical region, right?
Right.
But for the World Cup, it's solely geographical region.
Solely geographical region in this sense.
Okay.
So if we're going to compare apples to apples in this case, I would truly say that the Southeastern Conference most mirrors the UEFA, which is the European conference, because that's where the most teams that are currently in the world rankings of FIFA. That's where most of the top ranked teams exist right now.
I see.
The current champions of Germany are currently out of the UEFA and the European area, of course. They won the last World Cup, which took place in Brazil, in a very emphatic semifinal stomping of Brazil, which is currently one of the most, like, damning sort of defeats that Brazil has ever had, because they lost 7-1 on their own home field by the Germans. It was an amazing thing to watch. It's been kind of spoofed through like videos from like World Wrestling announcers, like all the Germany goals. They put the old JR Jim Ross commentating on like big wrestling moves. It's like, oh my God, he killed him, he killed him, he killed him every time like Germany scores. It's very silly, but kind of going back to the original question. The Southeastern Conference, or the SEC, is probably most like UEFA. The Big Ten is probably CONCACAF, where they call themselves high and mighty, and they talk a big game, but never really win anything except really, really randomly.
What's CONCACAF? What geographical region?
CONCACAF consists of North America, Central America, and the Caribbean.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then
we talk a big game, but we don't always produce.
No, not at all. At
Ugh.
least in recent memory. South America, their conference is known as CONMEBOL, which I don't know how phonetically that goes, but it's probably another language, which I'm not going to worry about right now.
Yeah.
South America is the Big 12. Tremendous wealths of offense going on there. Absolutely no defense, with the exception of one team usually, and that's more than likely Brazil, because they just play a strict possession game of beautiful passing and offense, and it's just, they're fun to watch.
Yeah, and when I think of the World Cup or soccer, I think of Brazil and South America.
Yeah.
Because in college I had a roommate from Chile, and that's what I kind of associate with that. And funny story, he was trying to learn American football, and we were watching the Gators, and those games were like 4 hours long sometimes.
Oh,
and his
yeah?
girlfriend was in his room; she didn't want to watch it, and she would come out periodically. It's still going.
Yeah.
It's still going. Football it's like 90 minutes, right, and you're done. But not American football. We like to take our time.
Oh yeah, commercials and after review.
Yes,
rolling on
all
the
that
field
stuff.
stands,
Yeah.
all sorts of things. But yeah, it's a very straightforward 2 45-minute halves, 15 minutes in the middle. No Aerosmith halftime show, unfortunately. But yeah, 2 45-minute halves. And then here's what's weird about soccer. I'll admit this right out the gate. The referee is still supposed to provide time at the end of this half for any stoppages in the game, whether it is for injuries, substitutions, goals that are scored, etc., etc. And that time that is added on to the half is known as stoppage time. Seems pretty straightforward.
So it makes up for
Usually-
any delays in the game.
That's essentially the idea, yes. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes of extra time at most. You've seen some extreme instances where there have been 6 minutes of stoppage because of egregious injuries or severe injuries or things like that.
Maybe this is my American football, mind, but why don't they just stop the clock? Wouldn't that make more sense?
It's a running
But
clock.
okay, cool. Shall we get to the second half of that question? Because I want to know, and I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit. Have there been any great upsets that are just made the drama of the narrative really fun?
I think historically going back to one of the earliest World Cups, because again, historically over time, there have been only, in terms of different champions, the first one ever was Uruguay. Then Italy hosted it and won it back-to-back years, which has only ever happened twice. And it hasn't happened since 1938.
Wow.
That's how hard it can be to win back-to-back World Cups.
Jeez.
Europe has pretty much held the World Cup title for the last 3 years, but I'd say the biggest upset probably came in during that first World Cup in 1930 when the U.S. finished third. That has been our greatest result ever in a World Cup. That's right.
Wow.
America has never won the World Cup. Ever. We are the greatest athletic nation in the world, great in all sports, but not soccer. And it's kind of really glaringly obvious that we are not good at this sport because if you look at it and think about it, if I asked any guy on the street right now, what are the top 3 sports that you watch on the television? And their answers are probably going to be football, basketball, and baseball.
Yeah.
Soccer might be coming in over some for baseball, but historically, if you ask most people in this country, soccer won't jump into the mix. It's starting to grow a little bit more.
Absolutely.
We now have a professional league, which was introduced 2 years after we hosted the 94 World Cup. But I wouldn't say that in a championship match there's really any glaringly surprising upset that has happened, because to get to that point, you need to have played extremely well.
Sure.
For at least 6 to 7 straight games to that point.
So by then you kind of know, okay, this is a trajectory that kind of is expected.
Correct. Quality generally wins out when it comes to the World Cup. It's those teams that have that stronger depth of talent that we find continue to make it into the latter stages. I guess.
So, like, for like college football, the underdog is so fun to follow. When they succeed, it's like, oh yeah, and they don't have that as much in World Cup.
That's really where the group stage matches provides the greatest drama.
Okay.
Up to that point, it's 4 years ago. Costa Rica made a certainly at the time historic run out of the group stages and into the qualification zones, because when they were placed into groups, they were not given any sort of break in terms of who they were paired up with. They were paired up with Uruguay, Italy, and England. And if you look at all three of those teams, each one of those teams has at least won one World Cup championship over time. So if you look at Costa Rica, we're like, well, they're going to be knocked out. Not only does Costa Rica go undefeated in group play, they beat Uruguay, they beat Italy, and they hold England to a tie, which keeps them out of the finals of the world, out of the knockout rounds of the World Cup. You would have picked that team to have finished in where England finished with no wins instead of no losses. That would have been the upset of that tournament, having Costa Rica escape what was then not really considered a group of death, but certainly one of the highlighted groups of, well, we have three great teams going in there. We assume that the two European teams will come out of it, but it was instead one North American side and a South American side in Costa Rica and Uruguay finishing 1 and 2 respectively, which was pretty cool.
I love that kind of turn in the narrative. That's really fun.
Absolutely. And if we look back to 4 years ago, how we fared in the World Cup, we made it out of the group stages quite simply because we didn't give up as many goals as another team. That's the only reason we made it through. How sad is that?
Well, I mean, whatever you do to get in there.
We made it through the group stages with the same record as Portugal. The famous Portugal with probably one of the most famous players in the world right now, and Cristiano Ronaldo, 4 years ago, were eliminated at the hands of the United States. Pretty insane if you think about it, because we eventually lost to the champions of that tournament in Germany in the group stages. We were in the same group as them throughout that time. When each of the group stages, you only play each team in your group once, which is great, and then you hopefully have the best results amongst your fellow group mates, and then you get to go play in the knockout rounds, which is fun. We only lost 1-0 to Germany. Portugal lost like 4-0 or something, so that's how we were able to sneak through.
Well, okay, that brings me to my complaint with soccer.
Yes.
And we want to be positive, but I'm still trying to understand why this is such a phenomenal sport, and I respect it. But like baseball, nothing happens often when you're watching the games.
No, it is fairly low scoring. That's true.
Yes, and so the moments of thrill aren't there. Now, I can see becoming fascinated with the intricate foot movements and the back and forth between the players and that strategy. That I can get on board with. That's fun. But like football has very clear, demarcated demonstrations of skill and strategy, almost like a war game, right? And I can get into that. But soccer, I feel like I put on a game last Sunday and in preparation for this, and my attention just could not stay. Just not much happened. The same with baseball. It's like, and it's kind of same with basketball. Like basketball, you don't watch until the end because there's constant scoring. So like soccer, there's not enough scoring. Basketball, there's too much scoring. It doesn't mean anything until the end. But that's just me. I'm not the biggest sports guy. So
I get it.
But can we shift to the next question?
Go right ahead.
And I think it'll let you respond to this. So to you personally, what are the teams that you follow that you find most entertaining and interesting?
Are we talking about for this current World Cup?
Sure, you can, but just in general, like, who do you like to follow?
The United States.
Sure.
Well, aside from the United States, I think that a lot of us here within the U.S., because we are such a melting pot of a nation coming from all over, we've found a way to gravitate ourselves to our ancestors' countries from where they emigrated from many, many moons ago.
Gotcha.
So historically, before the U.S. was as, I wouldn't say powerful, but they've certainly, up until this year, made it 2 World Cups. I continue to support them in the shadows while cheering for my parents' countries of Italy and Germany. My mom is all sorts of Ellis Island specials, and Germany is the largest portion of that. My dad is Italian through and through.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, Italy is more obvious, and my last name sounds more Italian than it does German, so I'm going to cheer for Italy.
Gotcha.
Well, I didn't have that excuse this year in the 2018 World Cup because just like the U.S., Italy didn't even make it in. Yeah, that's right. 3-time world champion Italy did not even make it. Excuse me. Yeah, 4-time world champion Italy did not even make it into the World Cup. So I had to cheer for what is now 4-time champion Germany.
So this is a unique World Cup
Very much
in
so.
recent history.
I would say it's unique in recent history, absolutely, in the sense that it's in Russia, it's in a communist nation, which it's nothing hasn't happened before. But well, no, it has. You're right. This is the first time we're ever holding it within a communist nation. Okay, so there's that going for it. You can take that as you will, but it's also one of those things where if you look at the FIFA rankings of teams right now going into June of 2018, you have the 9th ranked team in the world in Chile, not even in the tournament.
Wow.
Yeah. If you told me that if let's say you expand the BCS like you are all hoping to let's say 8 teams, that means the number 7 team doesn't even qualify for the BCS.
Mm-hmm.
That makes no sense to you. The number 19 team in Italy is not one of the best 32 teams in the world. 18, the tiny, tiny nation of Wales that exists within Great Britain and the United Kingdom. They have their own soccer federation. They don't even make the tournament. The U.S. is currently ranked 25th. So in your blessed top 25 rankings, yes, USA, you're in the top 25. But there is a team that is also in this tournament that is currently ranked 34th, 36th, 37th, 41st, 45th,
Wow.
48th.
So these rankings don't mean much. They don't guarantee you a spot.
Oh, not at all. Not in one bit.
Interesting. Because it's about their performance in these matchups that lead to qualification.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. 61st ranked Japan is in the tournament. The hosts, Russia, they are ranked 70th in the world. They are in this tournament.
Wow.
So these world rankings are really more posturing more than anything else, because where you finish does not make any real.
So maybe that's a problem with the ranking system. Because shouldn't the ranking kind of measure their ability level?
That's what you would expect them to do. Absolutely. That's the weird thing about the ranking procedures. And it's how FIFA explains is that any team that does well in world football wins points which enable it to climb up the world rankings. It is simply an average of the matches from the past 12 months and the average number of points gained from those matches beyond that 1 year. That's how they determine rankings.
Okay.
So it's not determined by what has happened in that year. It is what have you done this year versus what have you done every other year, and that's how many points you get.
Gotcha.
So that is why when we look at the men's rankings, the top 5 teams of Germany, Brazil, Belgium, Portugal, and Argentina hold true.
So I think we can maybe skip number 4, or do you want to touch on number 4, even though by the time this episode comes out, the narrative of what's going on in World Cup kind of won't be the same right now?
Right. We'll be looking at this tournament to this point, and certainly a lot of the matches. We should be already be towards the final of these matches. To this point, I think by the what is this coming out in July?
July 7th, and we're recording on June 22nd.
Yeah. So come July 7th, if we're looking on the calendar, we will be playing the second half of the quarterfinal matches. The winners of those matches will play in a semifinal, which will take place in Moscow, and so on and so forth. So we'll have already known who's already run the group, who's made it out of the round of 16, and who's already advanced into one half of the semifinals. So right now, as we're recording it, the current surprise of the tournament has been the hosts, Russia.
Oh.
Without a shadow of a doubt, the hosts have been the greatest surprise of this tournament. As I mentioned a moment ago, they're not exactly ranked very kindly by the World Soccer Rankings of FIFA, currently sitting in 70th, and had lost a good number, a handful of games before coming into this tournament. They were on bad form, as the pundits like to say. They were not expected to perform well, and they were just happy to be there because they were the host. The host historically has gotten an automatic entry into each World Cup because they are the host. Very nice of the FIFA to do that, but that doesn't mean that team is, again, more deserving of any of the other 31 teams to win the cup, unless, of course, they beat the other 31 teams and win it.
But these Russians, they upped their game and took hold of this moment, or as Ernesto de la Cruz would say, they seized their moment.
They seized their moments very much. Now, they've played two paperweights on the schedule so far. They have played fellow low rankers in Egypt. Egypt right now currently sitting in the FIFA rankings, a lowly 45th. So that was their first game. That was their second game, actually. They beat lowly Saudi Arabia, ranked 67th, by a score of 5-0.
Okay.
They then beat an Egypt team who has arguably right now one of the top 5 players offensively in the world, in Mohamed Salah, who did very well for his club team of Liverpool and got them to a club championship for Europe, but unfortunately dislocated his shoulder and hasn't been 100%, but is playing probably still hurt from that dislocated shoulder. Russia beat this Egypt team 3-1.
Wow.
Salah getting the one goal for Egypt.
So they, despite playing kind of not the best teams, they're climbing the ladder. Because they're 70th, right? And then we got a 45 and a 67 that they're beating. So they're climbing.
They have already advanced into the knockout stage. Essentially, once you've won 2 of your 3 matches, you're in. It doesn't really matter what then happens in that third match. If you get at least 6 points, that pretty much guarantees your status of moving into the knockout stage.
Gotcha.
For the majority of the tournament, especially in this group where Russia has won both of their games and Uruguay, their other team that they'll face in the third match, has won both of their games. So it's a great story for the host nation. They've outscored every team at this World Cup, and it's not even close. Like, again, the 5 goals that they scored against Saudi Arabia in the first game is more than some groups have scored it through the entire tournament to this to this group stage point. It's incredible to see that many goals go in a soccer match. That's usually only during the qualification matches when a team like, let's say, Spain, a perennial power in Europe, has to play a team like Liechtenstein.
Yeah.
Or when Florida plays a non-conference game against Florida A&M.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what happens. You see like a lopsided 49-0 score at halftime, and then it ends 63-21.
Yeah, a fluff team. Yeah. Well, final question, and I think this is the reason we're talking about this. Why do you love to watch soccer and the World Cup? Like, what is it?
Soccer, I truly feel, has been this great equalizer that allows nations to play against one another, and where the rankings truly don't have a bearing as to how that team can succeed. It is literally, it is in a sense, the March Madness tournament of basketball here in our college thoughts, where it is those teams who make the tournament, and once they're in, anything can happen.
That's fun.
That beauty of the madness of not knowing of not knowing who is going to win, who is going to matchup wise be better than a team that they shouldn't be beating on paper, whether that plays into that sort of matchup. It's amazing to watch, and you get to see fantastic individual skill from players like a Cristiano Ronaldo, like a Lionel Messi, or like a Neymar out of Brazil. It's just amazing to watch those individual players, how they then translate their individual skill with the other 10 players on their own team to try to win a game. That's another reason why I love soccer, is because it can be just one person who wins a game, but as we have seen in recent competitions, it sometimes takes a nation, literally and figuratively, to have them succeed. I mean, if you look back 2 years ago to the European Championships, which have no bearing on qualifications for this World Cup, which sounds insane, I know.
Yeah.
The individual Continental Championship of Europe saw Iceland, the lowly, tiny nation of Iceland. Yeah, that one where it only has like 300,000 total people. That one. They made it all the way into the quarterfinals of the European Championship in their only appearance in the European Championship. Their lowest ever FIFA ranking was 131st.
Jeez.
They're now 22nd in the world.
See, that's so fun. So it's like there's no system. The system is there, but it doesn't hold you back if you can prove your merit by skill. I like that a lot. I like that.
Again, really, really tiny island nation of Iceland. Maximum population that we've ever seen them have is 350,000 people. That is smaller than most American cities.
Yeah.
It's incredible, but they've created a fantastic football development system in Iceland, despite being much further north than the majority of nations that play in this tournament. They've gotten better by playing indoors. They've gotten better by developing indoor facilities for them to play, and a lot of their players play in the best leagues in the world. That's how they've gotten to this point of being able to do well and have that strong Icelandic Viking mindset of power through numbers. It's been fun to watch Iceland, for sure.
And there's a kind of nationalism that is fueling a lot of the team's desire to do well, right? With also a spirit of unity among the nations. So I think like the Olympics, this is functioning in a similar way. And that's cool.
Correct.
I really like that.
Correct. It's one of those things where you can come together with everyone from your country and want ultimately the same thing in just one sport. With the Olympics, it can be very, very scattered across the dozens of different sports that can exist at a Olympic Games.
Yes.
Where we're like, oh, archery. We should be good at that. No, we're not. Oh, okay. Track and field. Well, we've got football players. We should be good at that. Yeah, we are kind of good at that. But that's not our greatest sport.
But you're right. The focal point where the whole nation crowds around one game and then the next game. But it's not all these different things happening at once. That is a difference. Okay. So I really I enjoyed thinking up questions for this interview and talk on the World Cup, and I enjoyed your answers because now I get it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to make up for my wandering attention when watching the games, but perhaps I need to watch a game in the same room as you
that might be
get
doing
there.
it, because there's so much innate strategy of how each team lines up, how each team sets their formation, because like many different offensive plays in football and many different defensive plays, the way each of the 11 guys on the field lines up is completely different from one team to another.
Oh, and speaking of football, like I was in high school marching band. I never watched a single game. And no, I went to every game because I didn't care. I didn't get it. I didn't understand the rules. I didn't know what first down meant. That meant play the school theme song, you know. But now, after my wife has taught me, and I've watched a lot and learned the narrative and the rules, and now it's really exciting. Right. So I can see that happening. with your
It's
help.
a beautiful game, and I think that I know that, as we talked about, there's not a lot of scoring, but that's what makes it so exciting. Is that when that breakthrough happens, when a team
Sure.
scores a goal, or when another team responds to the goal being scored against them, that burst of excitement that happens in that moment is just so thrilling.
Yeah.
Like if every football game ended 7-6 or 14-7.
Yeah.
You would say, well, that was a terrible game. No one played offense well.
Or 3-6.
Or 3-2. Dare
Yeah.
we ever see a football game finish 3-2? Or 4-3 for that matter. You'll say it was a massively bad offensive game or a greater defensive game. There are 11 guys on the field, more than half of which are designed to stop the ball from going in the net.
Yeah.
With football, it is 11 guys trying to score and 11 guys stopping the other ones from scoring, and it's usually one or two players who break the mold and find a way to score.
Sure. Yeah.
With soccer, you need generally one or two great players or 11 great players playing on the same wavelength together for 90 minutes to really make the difference. That's why this game is beautiful.
And I still wonder why soccer hasn't been able to take root as much in the United States. And
Money.
okay.
That's
I guess
it.
that would be it. Yeah.
That is the root of all evil in the world. But mostly why we do not have the greatest soccer athletes in the world. Most of our great athletes will go play football. Most of our great athletes will go play baseball because simply the money is greater there than it ever will be playing soccer in the States.
True.
Our best players, our best players right now for the United States are playing in Europe. And they're all young, which at least gives us hope and promise for the future.
Yeah.
But historically, it's always been thought of that you should be staying within your own country to try to make yourself better, to greater your chances of your nation being better at soccer. That has completely been flipped on its head within the last decade for all of soccer, and now the U.S.'s best players are just kind of getting the hint of that and finally going out to Europe to play.
Okay.
But we'll see. It'll be 4 years of seeing how this national team develops in the youth and how it grows and becomes better. But it's very, very sad, certainly, that our team didn't make it. But cheer for your parents' country. Cheer for your grandparents' country in this World Cup if you haven't had the chance to. It certainly will hopefully make a more enjoyable experience.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you about the World Cup and soccer in general. This is a unique episode. It's not pop culture.
No.
In the same, I mean, I guess sports are a part of pop culture in a way, but it's not something we can put on the shelf. But it was a really fun break from our Pondering Pixar series, and I look forward to resume Pondering Pixar next week.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about Pixar next week, and we'll have another great film to talk then. I think we'll be talking about a story about machines and men. And I'll leave it at that. But Chris, it was great to kind of share my love of the beautiful game with you, and I hope our viewers were able to enjoy it. Their comments, feedback, and commentary about today's episode, if they have more questions about the game, can be left in the comments section below or on our Facebook, or tweet us your questions and feedback. He is at Shelf Nerds. I am at Alex_Salvo. I'm again, Chris, thanks so much for allowing me to share my love.
Oh, the love rubbed off on me. It was awesome.
Wow.
In an
You just
appropriate
went
way,
there.
okay? I didn't say you
Just
scored.
went there. Whoa.
Yeah, we better stop now before we get in trouble. For Alex, I'm Chris. We'll see you next time on the shelf.